Jesus on this day. Honestly, it was like watching Caitlin Clark in cleats. And I love that line from last night from the game. Caitlin Clark is almost fictional at this point because, honestly, that's what Arsenal season feels like watching them, David.
From the Men in Blazers studios in the crap part of Bedford, New York, the crap part of West Hollywood, California, it's the Men in Blazers podcast, Rog.
We back like San Diego State. Davo, first of all, off the top, I mean, this weekend, it's been like the end of a Godfather movie where just like everybody, the classical music is playing, there's people being garroted, other people are being stabbed, just bodies piling up everywhere. And I didn't think we'd get here, but I want to be first, big man up top, give you my commiserations. I thought he'd be there forever. This feels like the end of an institution. This feels like the Berlin Wall falling. How on earth can you go on having heard the news of Graham Potter's departure, David?
Yeah, this morning, I must say, I woke up in Los Angeles and checked in on all my jobs to check in to see if I'd been fired from any of them. And it seems, for now, of course, we don't know until later, but for now, I seem to have all my jobs still.
It's like the verification on Twitter. You keep checking. Is it gone? Maybe my job's gone. Maybe I'm no longer a manager.
No, I've still got my jobs. But yeah, yesterday, I've been traveling a lot, and I think I dozed off at some point in front of some of the sport I was watching this weekend, no doubt the Miami Open or something. And anxious phone call from my son, George, to tell me, literally
massive Chelsea fan, massive
screaming with delight, Potter's been fired! Potter's been fired! And it was, I would say, second only to the Champions League win a few seasons ago. This was his greatest moment as a Chelsea fan. That moment where he was telling me he was walking across Union Square at the moment that he got the alert on his phone that Potter had been fired. He was just so happy.
You texted me and said that my son sounded more delirious that Graham Potter had just been fired than if we actually do beat Real Madrid in the Champions League. I mean, manager firings, it's why we watch, right?
Yeah, pretty much. His sister, JJ, had been to her first game at Stamford Bridge this weekend. She went with a bunch of her friends in London, went and saw the game, was very, very disappointed. And George had given her a lot of grief about being such bad luck because when he'd gone, Chelsea had won. And now when she'd gone, Chelsea had lost. But then he didn't realise that she brought in the even greater win of Graham Potter being fired. So she's welcome back anytime. Respect
to Nando's. Graham Potter was the 12th manager. I mean, honestly, it's like bear baiting at this point, what we're watching, this grisly, gruesome, can't take your eyes off it Premier League campaign. 12th manager to lose his job in the Premier League this season. A record by some distance. It is quite bonkers, right, David?
It's a lot of managers gone. And by the way, there's still another game to go this Premier League weekend. We could see another one, maybe. In fact, Tottenham have got 2 managers right now. They could fire 3 managers this afternoon, and none of us would be surprised.
Mason, come into my office.
Yeah. So it could still be going on. Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, it used to be just Chelsea who would fire multiple managers per season. But this year, everybody's getting in on the act.
Yeah, you know, funny enough, Burnley has done something that Roman Abramovich has never done, which is fire 2 managers within one season and move on to his third. We think of Abramovich as that man with a finger on the button of the Shark Tank. But even Roman must be looking at Odd Todd and being like, that man is crazy. And I actually spoke to a Premier League manager last week, not Eric Ten Hag, another one, who talked quite honestly.
Well, if he's still a Premier League manager, there's only 3 of them, Rog. If you talked to somebody last week who is still a Premier League manager, it's one of 3. Okay, so Jurgen said.
Wasn't but he said, you don't know how hard this job is. He said it's bloody miserable for most of the time. And he said something really quite beautiful that's haunted me ever since. He said, the only time you ever feel respite is in that fleeting moment when the final whistle blows and the 2 managers do that head nod and handshake thing together. And he said, in that single second, you feel this immense, overwhelming, shared bond of brotherhood. It just rains, he said. I said, between 2 doomed men. Is that what it is? It's just like, doom man, respect, doom man. And he said, yeah, we all know. We all know we're on the voyage of the damned. It's amazing.
Well, yeah, 15 out of 20 teams, by definition, every season, are disappointing their fans, and there are exceptions, but
He's lost the fans.
Yeah, 15 out of 20 teams aren't in the top 5, and they're not doing. You go to the 2 Robbies in the studio, and they're like, oh yeah, they're just really not doing.
He's toxic. He's lost the fans.
And
when you've lost the Robbies, is that what you're saying? That's the threshold for the American owners when they've lost the Robbies.
Well, you lose at least one of them pretty much every week. It's just very, very tough. And this is though. Rog, I've attended a lot of American sporting events recently. And by the way, I should make clear, there have been some amazing sporting events within them. We've witnessed some great tennis tournaments, some amazing golf. There's been both NCAA tournaments, both the women's and the men's have been outstanding. But a lot of sport in the United States is played without stakes. A lot of the NBA regular season, a lot of the Major League Baseball regular season, a lot of Major League Soccer, honestly, is played without stakes.
With cheesesteaks, just cheesesteaks.
The Premier League, the stakes every single week. These are regular season, mid-season, mid-table games, and yet everybody's job is at risk at the end of every game. It's pretty phenomenal.
And with all these American owners now, you've nailed it. The barometer for success or failure for the manager. When you lose a Robbie, bad news, Graham. Yeah. You've lost a Robbie. You're hanging on by a thread. One Robbie to go. We will talk much more about all of this. Todd Burley's Chelsea really channeling Daisy Jones in the 6, making a good thing bad in a moment. But last word for now to GFOP Saints Forecast, who tweeted Chelsea acting like a name brand Everton is wild. I love that. You're just a name brand Everton. Oh, Davo, a lot of football, a lot of goals, a lot of madness to unpack. Let's get to it.
Bowley out, Roman. I want to talk about that later. But before we get to the football and all of that, we got to talk about everything going on at Men in Blazers World Headquarters, starting with a recap of what was a rather breathless international break as we announced the addition of none other than Fabrizio Romano to the Men in Blazers Media Network. That's an incredible addition to our growing team, Roger.
Yeah, it's crazy times to be alive, David. One of our GFOPs, G. Sanchez, tweeted, "This is Zava to Richmond levels of crazy." And we've long joked on this show, regular listeners know this, that soccer is America's sport of the future, as it has been since 1972. Fab joining our network, our community, is a tribute really to all we built together with you listeners, this community of football fandom, of passion, of creativity. And with the Women's World Cup coming this year, the Copa coming next summer, and then the Men's World Cup crashing onto our shores in 2026, to more.
Go and subscribe to Fab's Here We Go podcast right now, his first pod. Or can I call him Fabo? Go and subscribe to Fabo's Here We Go podcast right now. His first pod on the MIB Media Network is recording today and will drop imminently. It's on a separate pod feed from this one, but just search Here We Go wherever you get your pods and smash that subscribe. That and so much more dropping this week, starting tomorrow with a very special edition of Do It Live, Tuesday at 5 p.m. after Chelsea versus Liverpool. But for now, let's get this thing started with a toast. Rogelio, would you do the honors?
Yeah, I want to raise my third first Bud Light of the day to old friend Thomas Tuchel, whose reign at Bayern Munich got off to the most perfect of starts, charging into a 3-0 Der Klassiker lead within 23 minutes to blow out then league-leading Dortmund 4-2 and retake this team's rightful place at the top of the Bundesliga. Despite only having a handful of training sessions, Tuchel's tactical stamp was beginning to be evident all over Bayern, who really bullied Emre Can, had 2-goal Thomas Muller mischievously reinvigorated, and with 8 games to go, Tuchel back in the resurrection business, and it was magnificent to see him grinning down the stretch, fully clad in Munich garb now, Davo, as if he was the winner of some grab-all-you-want competition down at the Bayern club shop. Oh, same weekend, Chelsea implodes under Potter. And I wonder, Davo, if the Germans have a word for Schadenfreude, because I'm sure he's feeling a lot of it. Courage, Big T.
Tuchel one day is going to open a store, isn't he? He's going to call Tuchel's, and he's going to have all of his stuff from the club shops at every team he ever coached. He's going to make a fortune post his management career.
Selling his
I'm going down to Tuchel's.
Going down to Tuchel's. Gonna get myself a Chelsea posing pouch.
Okay, to the football. So many massive games, so many goals, so many managers fired. We're going to do it chronologically. Wow, starting with the game. This is going back to the Big Bang. Starting with the game that kicked off the Premier League's return, the game that has defined the title race in recent years. Man City
feels like it was
4.
years ago, this, David.
I know. I can't. I remember the goals in black and white on muddy pitches. Man City 4, Liverpool 1 in the midst of a season of struggle. Jurgen Klopp and co. run into that maniacal Iberian wielding a sky blue set of nunchucks. It was actually Liverpool who took the lead in the 17th minute behind an emphatic Mo Salah finish. But just 10 minutes later, Julian Alvarez hit back to make it 1-1 at halftime. And in the second half, City ensured we wouldn't see any more piano key-filled Klopp smiles by absolutely blowing the doors off. KDB scored 53 seconds into the second half. Goals from Gundo and Greals followed. And City won their 4th straight, temporarily closing the gap on the arse to 5 points.
Oh, Liverpool having a Twitter blue of a season. Pep said ahead of this game, if they lost, the title race would be over. So this match, in name, the most important of the Premier League season. I mean, it has been the past 3 or 4, but in terms of the title ramifications, these really felt more in relation to Arsenal Football Club as Liverpool lumbered up to play City for the 4th time this season. And it all felt a bit sad, really. It felt like an epoch ago. How we laughed, Davo, at Haaland when he blew his chance in the Community Shield. And just as long since October when Liverpool had won 1-0 at Anfield. It's been so much Liverpool darkness since then. And even though City had no Erling Haaland out with a groin injury, Davo, have you heard about supply chains in terms of robot parts in the north of England?
Yeah, well, I do watch The Mandalorian, so I know how difficult it is to get these advanced robot parts. But yeah, here's the luxury. They don't actually need him, because they've got the humans who can also play really good football, Roger.
Yeah, there is a school of thought that says Pep actually kind of prefers when his 42-goal scorer is looking on from the box. And to be candid, even when he looked on forlornly from his box, Haaland still looked odds-on to get a hat-trick from up there. But Alvarez stepped in. Don't worry, City are better without Haaland. And we would find out if that was true. City fans knew this, that without Haaland, they'd still won 100% of their Premier League matches this season, and they hadn't lost a match when he was not in the starting lineup. That's just mind-bendingly phenomenal and the greatest tribute to City this season that I can conjure. As they set out to try and close that 8-point gap on Arsenal ahead of them, they enforced their domination on a Liverpool midfield, bleeding confidence. Pep inserted John Stones from right back into the midfield, which gave them just the chance to run the game, define the rhythm, the tempo. Gundogan switching the ball from flank to flank, opening up Liverpool, sending Grealish out in front of Fabinho and inviting him to give him a good kicking. Liverpool's main weapon seemed to be Alisson on that quick release, lashing it over to Salah whenever he could. And then the game just went up in terms of intensity. It was a Virgil van Dijk tackle, a thunderous one. Liverpool knocked City out their rhythm for a second and undone. City, in the most basic fashion, Alisson knocking the ball around the back, City stepping up, over-eager, and then Trent snapping alive, freeing Jota at the halfway line. Okongi keeping him on in acres of space. He held the ball up, found a charging Mo Salah, the most lethal of the many Mo Salahs, and he unleashed a Justin Verlander fast ball into the corner of the net. It was stunning.
Yeah, a little bit Liverpool of yore. That quick play, forcing defenses to take risks. I think it was Ake who got terribly out of position there. And, Jota doing a very good job. I mean, for a smaller man, wow, he's physically strong. Holds off the defender. And as you said, a charging Mo Salah. We've missed a charging Mo Salah.
We have. It's my favourite kind of Mo Salah.
Just excellent work. And great goal.
4 goals in 4 games against City this season, but it proved all to be horrible, horrible misdirection for Liverpool fans. Liverpool had only won 3 on the road this season. They failed to score away in 4 of their last 5. And credit City, they responded well. It became a game of compressed space, lightning pass and move. City digging right back into their jazz-styling rhythm. And within 11 minutes, they were level in quite exquisite fashion. Just a perfect City move. The defenders passing it back and forwards across the back line, inviting Liverpool onto them. Then KDB springing the trap, rolling the ball through Robertson. Mahrez charging right into the Liverpool nerve centre, freeing Gundogan, who slipped in Grealish, who had just 61 seconds earlier, DK Metcalf, Salah down the other end. Now, he was right at the opposite byline, setting up Alvarez from the Haaland spot. 13th goal of the season, Davo. No one's talking about Alvarez, but that is his 13th goal of the season. Stealth massive impact.
Yeah, and actually after this game, everyone was talking about Grealish and being the obvious man of the match. But Alvarez, wow, game after game after game. He's just outstanding. And, you know, one of the stealth top players of the season.
Yeah, I mean, in that moment, just the whole of City, the stadium just went bonkers. The match direction, huge credit because they caught all of it. There was an immediate cutaway to Haaland celebrating like Cocaine Bear in the box. Man was pogoing around like Sean Dyche at a rave. They then cut back to some random old City fan who just like suddenly for a second represented heritage, tradition, and the twinge of a Happy Monday's acid casualty. Greals giving it the big one. Pep's reactions, 2 gears. That man either gets angry when City score. He's seen some tiny, tiny thread, a pull that he didn't like, an imperfection, or he just utterly, utterly loses his crap. Here he did the latter up to 11, leaping, swinging his arms, celebrating right in front of Tsimikas' face, then shaking Arthur's hand. It was pretty much, David, watching Pep, he lived out, I think, pretty much every single emoji that's ever been invented. Even that weird eye wink one.
Yeah, a lot of them. Yeah, the dancing guy.
Do you think he's an arsehole? Because if Mourinho did that stuff, we would not. You always say that, the Mourinho test for you. Like, if Mourinho did it, ... would we find it so charming?
Yeah, I think that's fair. But let's face it, Mourinho is, and even as someone who is a Mourinho apologist, Mourinho is an arsehole. Like, there is no doubt about it. He's an arsehole. And when he does anything, even when he does quite nice things, he's still an arsehole. I would say it's the opposite for Pep. I think Pep is not an arsehole. So when he does arseholey things, it might be a little arseholey, but he's not an arsehole.
Second half, inside the first minute, City essentially started to treat Liverpool like LA Dodgers security guards treat fans making wedding proposals in the outfield. Liverpool not even mentally out the locker room, switching off across the back. Mahrez freed by Alvarez, Van Dijk losing De Bruyne. Acres of space. Mahrez crossed in, 100th career goal for him. More than just a black belt and assist for KDB for that iconic ginge. And talking of assists, Mahrez, most Premier League assists, 56, I think, by an African player in the Premier League all time. Again, another detail lost in City's just pantheon of greatness and a total mood change. And Liverpool just really deflated, beaten in that moment. Put to the sword, defenders shattered, static, Alvarez dancing in the area, Gundogan, such an intelligent footballer, chipping in the loose ball exquisitely. Greals got a fourth, made one, scored one, saved one with that track back to snuff out Mo Salah. Post-game, no filter. I was in the toilet all morning. I felt sick, but I feel all right now. You know, since the World Cup, Greals has 8 assists and 4 goals. Barney Renee in The Guardian called him the human equivalent of the perfect weekend bachelor party, David.
Poor Greals. He does whatever he does. He doesn't get a lot of respect from the elite British football writers, but he's still a fan favourite and probably really fun to go out on the lash with.
You know, him or Diego Costa is one of the great philosophers' questions. Who would you rather go out on the night, on the last year? I think it's different. I think Greals, if it was a weeknight, Diego Costa for the big set piece, the weekender, right?
No, Greals is more predictable. If you want like a good night, you go out with Greals. You might get the night of your life of the end times with Diego Costa, but you never know what kind of a mood he's going to be in.
Yeah, and the only thing that is absolutely sure if you go out with Diego, and I may or may not be speaking from life truth, is that you're going to wake up and there's some monkey's genitalia in your mouth and you're not quite sure how they got there. But who has had a night like that?
You'll be hoping it's a monkey. Yeah.
When you watch City like this, I marvel what Arsenal have achieved. Honestly, you watch City play at this level, and I think, wow, City, but I also think, bloody wow, Arsenal. Just like, how are they 8 points clear of this human machine, this IBM deep blue of a football team when City are at their best? It is. It's like I said on Morning Joe this morning, it's like watching an incredible just jazz quintet players like Miles Davis, Art Blakely. It's like Charlie Park, it's Mingus, or The Wire tweeted this, Omar, Chris Partlow, Weebay, Snoop, Brother Muzon, Stinkham, all fighting on the same side. At Liverpool on this day, Ovs Bubbles. City, 4 moments of poetic beauty. Just astonishing. If people in future generations ask, what was a Pep, Davo? Wouldn't you show them these 4 goals and a cashmere hoodigan and be like, this was Pep?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we should say, because there may be some City fans yelling at their pod radios, that one of the reasons that Arsenal are 8 points clear is they've played 1 more game. But, still, your point is valid, is City are so good. They do look like the best team in the Premier League. I watch them. I think there's no better team in the Premier League than Manchester City. And then you watch Arsenal play and you realise, wow, they're as good, if not even better than City. And they don't seem to have the blips that City occasionally have in their play. It's just remarkable. We're being graced by 2 absolutely fantastic teams in the Premier League.
Incredible. This was a statement slaughter. It really was. Pep called it City's best performance in 7 years, his 100th home win in the Premier League. And 23 days from today, as we pod, Arsenal will be at the Etihad, 2 irresistible creative forces going up against each other. This for City is the first of 8 games that they're playing in April. The 2 Champions League games against Bayern, Thomas Tuchel's Bayern upcoming, the FA Cup semi-final, surging. This form, you've got to say, augurs so well for the Champions League, which as a trophy to Pep at City is his white whale like Moby Dick to Captain Ahab. All my means are sane, my motive and my object mad. Liverpool, though, 8th place, 8 points off 4th. This rivalry has felt for the past few seasons like the biggest game in the world. Now it feels like really an indicator of the seismic gap between the 2 clubs in the second half of the season. Liverpool floundering, Champions League journey over. Will there be one next season, or will there be Thursday, Sunday football? Acres between these 2 squads as they currently are shaped, and Liverpool leave knowing they were toyed with. This was about as fair fight as Mina Kimes against Jason Whitlock. Klopp defeated. Really, nothing good to say about this game, he said. We cannot have challenges in key areas. We cannot be that open. I can't explain it. I can just describe it. Liverpool must play Chelsea, Arsenal and Leeds in the next 8 days, aware that the financial and Bellingham consequences if they don't make Champions League, Davo, are seismic.
Yeah, and you do also feel that if Chelsea weren't so bad, there may be more focus on Liverpool and even Jurgen's situation, which is unthinkable.
That's what he said. It's what he said almost this morning. Ultimately, he's like the last holdover. No one's noticing him because of the carnage at other clubs. Producer J-Dubs, on great authority, says Diego Costa is the hangover. Greals is spring breakers.
So, with that City win, Arsenal needed a dub to retain that 8-point lead. They went and treated Leeds as if Mikel Arteta was a Princeton alum looking for some Jesse Marsh revenge. Well, we got him in somehow. Arsenal 4, Leeds United 1. A comprehensive victory highlighted by Gabriel Jesus brace, his first goals in 18 games for club and country, and his first start since returning from injury. Ben White and Xhaka Khan added goals, and Arsenal showed no signs of wilting. Leeds, meanwhile, plummet to 17th at time of recording.
Oh, how would Arsenal respond to City's demolition of a performance? Well, they began with the thrill of a return for Gabriel Jesus, back for his first start since November the 12th after injuring himself in World Cup play. A loss, remember, at the time, which was meant to doom Arsenal Football Club. But Leeds, already weakened by injuries to key men. Our mate Tyler Adams out after hamstring surgery. God bless Tyler. Neonto out, and the excellent Verba also injured. They've got bum-clenching games coming up against Forest and Crystal Palace. And they almost white flagged this game. They fielded an immensely weakened team, keeping the powder dry. Weston on the bench alongside Bamford and Rodrigo. Though you wouldn't have known it from the beginning. Somerville just a live wire down the flank, the most direct player on the field. Arsenal, almost stunned by their opponent's temerity, slumbered through the early exchanges. And the crowd too seemed strangely subdued until, I think Arsenal hadn't even mustered a shot on goal until the 32nd minute, when that accident waiting to happen, Luke Ayling, he simply ailinged. I think that's the verb for it. Dived in, actually missed Gabriel Jesus, but then he made a supreme second effort, didn't he, David, to catch him on the knee?
No, he both missed and then failed to remove his leg. He made two horrible errors. He missed and then failed to remove his leg. And, you know, Gabriel Jesus, not one to stare a gift horse in the mouth, saw that trailing leg and thought, oh, I can walk into that. And he walked into it, fell over, penalty.
Yeah, it was soft penalty, but Ayling's gonna Ayling, and the Emirates crackled to life as Jesus himself finally swaggered up to the spot, sent Meslier the wrong way. First goal since October the 1st, 182 days, and you could see the joy. You could see almost a tear in the moment of celebration, a relief for this kid. Let go by City, meant to be sent to a team who were not a threat, Arsenal Football Club, but he and Zinchenko have propelled Arsenal, their new team, to this season woven out of pure dreams. Jesus on this day, honestly, it was like watching Caitlin Clark in cleats. And I love that line from last night from the game. Caitlin Clark is almost fictional at this point, because honestly, that's what Arsenal's season feels like watching them, David.
Yeah. It is, you know, they're scoring goals, which we've said this a lot about City, that we haven't seen them score before. We haven't even imagined. We haven't even seen scored in the Premier League before. Every single outfield player on that team has scored this season. And even more than that, every single outfield player looks like they can score in every game.
Yeah, I mean, by the way, say Leeds in that first half, still like the Leeds of Jesse Marsh, where they outplayed their opponents, but just had terrible luck or just brutal decision-making in key moments, and experienced defeat from the jaws of wonder. The second half wasn't even 2 minutes old when Zinchenko rolled the ball to Martinelli, threaded just an exquisite poem of a cross to the back post. Ben White, that's your point, Dave. Everybody bloody scores. Ben White just keeps on scoring, thundered the ball home. Former Leeds man, 46 games there on loan from Brighton, but proper full-throated Selly. The third, 8 minutes later, slow, patient build-up play. Jesus fed Trossard, who wriggled like a little eel before feeding it back to Jesus, who kept that run going, thundered the ball home. And I love Trossard. He celebrated as if he's scored, Davo, 11 games for Arsenal, 7 assists and 1 goal since he's arrived. Just an unmudricky impact. That number of assists alone is apparently more than 10 Premier League clubs have mustered with their entire squads in that time.
How dare you? Mudryk has 1 assist, and that's like he's prolific from a Chelsea point of view. Yeah, look, Trossard has done this incredible thing. Is that it is often said about players who move up from, with respect to Brighton, the sort of the mid-level Premier League sides, that when they move up to the elite sides, it's very difficult for them to play at the same level. Trossard is so much better at Arsenal than he ever was at Brighton. He was good at Brighton, but he's doing things that we never saw him do at all. And surrounded by these great players, it's just making him even better. What a phenomenal player. What a phenomenal
I think he said all he ever wanted was to be shot of Mope, was what he said, I think. When he said he knew his play would go next level. But yeah. God, Xhaka.
Can we throw in Cucurella there as well, please?
Xhaka finished off the scoring, an incredible third in 3 games for him. Your point that everybody is scoring. Everybody is scoring.
How good was that goal? Wow.
I mean, just Erdegaard, oh God, it's all so bloody exciting. And 7 straight Premier League wins for Arsenal, matching City and their challenge, goal for goal, 8 points clear, Liverpool next. The amazing thing about Arsenal, these games are meant to be stress-filled. We're meant to see nerves. We're meant to see doubts. We're meant to see fear of failure just be the overwhelming dominant emotion. We see none of that. They're playing this string out with joy so far, David.
Yeah, it's bringing out the best in them. And that's so wonderful to see. I still think it's going to be close come the end of the season. City's fixture list, I mean, the number of fixtures they've got to play, I think is still going to be hard for them because they're involved in so many more competitions. And they've played 1 less game in the Premier League. But it's But I just think it's going to be close. And
yeah, Arsenal have got their trip to Liverpool. They play City, obviously, in the game to end all games. And they've also got to play Newcastle still. There is more challenge ahead.
Yeah, but the way that Arsenal are playing during these challenging times, it just makes me think that they've got it. I think it's going to be close, but I think that they've got it. They're not wilting. And the fact, there is this sense, and, I remember Chelsea when they were good, is that they had this same ability to get scoring from anywhere. So many goals scored by defenders, so many goals scored by the spine, and everyone chipping in all over the park. And that makes it easier because one player doesn't feel the pressure. There isn't one system that seems to get you wins. And yeah, God, they played so well this weekend.
Quick shout out to one of the biggest stories in the football world this week, the one everybody's talking about. I'm not sure if you saw this, Davo, but Arsenal goalkeeper Aaron Ramsdale was asked who the funniest player at the club is. And he just started to laugh and told the story of how Matt Turner in Arsenal's FA Cup clash against Manchester City had a little tete-a-tete with Kevin De Bruyne, and the ref stepped in. And Matt Turner just blurted to the ref and Kevin De Bruyne, "Relax, dog. It's a dogfight out there."
Yeah.
Where does that...
yeah. So good. It reminded me that I'm constantly teased by my American friends by saying really normal English things. Normal English things.
Like what?
Just honestly, the way I'd sometimes say, what? Like that, it's those sort of things, like little things that mean nothing that I'm teased about mercilessly by Americans, even by my own children.
So what, you're saying the word "what" in your plummy English accent?
What?
Is that there with that's equal to "relax, dog"? It's a dog fight out there to Kevin De Bruyne.
But that's the difference between England and America. But it's the sort of thing that if someone said in an American game that "relax, dog, it's a dog fight out there," nobody would bat an eyelid. It wouldn't be funny at all. But in Britain, that is peak hilarity.
To Kevin De Bruyne as well. That is to me. I'm being serious for a second. That ranks up there as a great American achievement in the Premier League. Just Matt Turner having the chutzpah, the pure New Jersey chutzpah to look at Kevin De Bruyne, one of the greatest footballers in a modern period, and just blurt that out. "Relax, dog. It's a dogfight out there." To me, that's up there with Clint Dempsey's 22-goal season, and I won't be... and I'll argue that to the death. I actually want that on a mug, Davo. "Relax, dog. It's a dog fight out there."
Well, I imagine if you want it on a mug, Rog, it will be on a mug. We've learned nothing from 13 years of Men in Blazers. Yeah, amazing stuff. Okay, Newcastle 2, Manchester United 0. A massive top four clash to close out the weekend in front of the Premier League's leading Free the Nipple enthusiasts, the Toon Army. And their team put a whooping on Erik ten Hag's mob after having the much better of the chances. They finally broke through on 65 minutes when Alain Saint-Maximin's pullback header found the noggin of one Joseph Willock. Callum Wilson added some 88th minute insurance, and Newcastle leapfrogged Man United into third place. The latter have not won or scored in 3 games.
Fifth, welcome third in a game that next season might be Saudi Arabia hosting Qatar for some Persian Gulf War proxy warring.
Wow.
But this one took place 5 weeks after they played out that Carabao Game of Wonder. They met again with that battle for fourth, really a much more lucrative prize.
Steaks.
Yes, cheesesteaks up for grabs. St. James's Park just crackling deliciously. And the game bright and open early on. Both teams proper up for it. Punches, blocks, long staff whiffs. Manchester United crucially arriving again, Casemiro-less, with that dashing Sabitzer in his cape and his monocle alongside Spain's Slayer McTominay in the midfield. And just Guimaraes, Longstaff and Alain Saint-Maximin delighted in opening up down the right on repeat in the early exchanges, and the Gallagher end tried to get under Fernandez's skin by chanting, "There's only one Bruno, there's only one Bruno." And we got to say, United looked very Weghorst. They really did, struggling to hold on to the ball. David De Gea made the supreme look routine, keeping him in the game. Willock blasted the ball over like Harry Kane from the penalty spot with a goal at his mercy. David, we had a great tweet from GFOP at Jerry30329 and said, "Wout Weghorst has been on my TV every now and then since he joined Wolfsburg, and even still, whenever I see him, I'm momentarily startled to see a young man there because I hear his name and picture a bloke who fought in both world wars and smoked for 70 years. Don't you think United fans would prefer that man played up front for them, the 70-year-old smoker?
Yeah, I always see Wout Weghorst more as a contemporary of Bruegel, but lovely oils. Did amazing work, Rod.
God, don't get me started on his gouache.
Yeah, Westphalian peasant life. But he plays a little bit of football.
Yeah, but an emphasis on a little bit. I think he had like 7 touches deep into the game. Even Newcastle's goalkeeper Pope had double the number. Eric Ten Hag, my mate, interview coming soon, as half-time team talk. It wasn't him, by the way. It was not him saying it's the voyage of the team. Okay. He wouldn't say it. It wasn't Tenny. It was Tenny. I call him Tenny when we're together. I call him Tenny, But his half-time team talk is like, we look to Ten Hag and think he's going to change the game. That's the thing that's going to get points out of this game. But instead, it was just like a bitsy, scrappy fist fight into that second half. And when United did make their subs, I think they flung on Martial and Sancho. It was actually Newcastle who reacted with energy. 65th minute, Guy Moresh floated a rainbow from the sideline to St. Maximin, who selflessly nodded the ball back across the face of goal. Best assist since George Kittle helped Pat McAfee take down the Miz at WrestleMania. And Willock, waiting to redeem himself for the first half hour, nodded at home from close range. Was it Peter Drury? Yeah, it was Peter Drury. Screamed, "The Gallowgate growls its joy." God, just alliteration as sweet as the move which triggered it. Beautiful football, David.
Yeah, I mean, Newcastle in this game, I turned to my son, who I was watching it with, and said, this is the best performance I've seen by any team in the Premier League who are not City or Arsenal this season.
But again, we expected a comeback from a United team that have scored 11 goals in that final 15 minutes of games. And honestly, they just looked punched out. They looked, the best way I could describe it, this looked like a Solskjaer team where they couldn't control the game, so they just hoped for something, anything, bits on the counter. No goals in 3 Premier League matches now. Nothing since they won 3-0 against Leicester on February 19th. It was Newcastle who put the game to the sword. Kieran Trippier angling home. Such a delicious free kick. What a weapon he is, Davey.
Yeah, he's a nice piece of manpower to have on your team.
God, it is exquisite watching him. Callum Wilson just slotting in between Rashford and Lindelof to angle home. Ten Hag said, Newcastle had more desire than my team. My lord, Newcastle are feisty. They're aggressive. They're fast. 5 weeks on from that comprehensive Carabao Cup dismantling, a kinetic Newcastle get their revenge. They clip United before a delirious home support. We were told Newcastle were out of gas. There was that spell where they lost 3 games straight. But instead, it's United who feel like they're losing their legs. They leap over Ten Hag's mob. Newcastle in 3rd place this late in the season. Tottenham pushed to 5th. Both Uniteds have a game in hand on Spurs. Davo, do you think if you give a Toon fan the choice between the Carabao Tchotchke and Champions League football next season, they would both bite your arm off while getting Toon 23-24 champions of Europe tattooed irrationally on their breast?
Oh, yeah. Way more chances to go out on the lash and cause destruction in European cities. I mean, much better prospect.
Get your man boobs out in capital cities across the continent. Who's with me? Oh, man. Manchester United.
Hello, Slovenia.
What? We're drawn against Metalist Carviv? I'm there. God, 1.0 goals for Manchester United in the last 3 league games. And we've seen City do it without Haaland. We've seen Arsenal for a long part of this season do it without Jesus. But for United, Casemiro seems to be like they're everything. And United have played 6 away matches against top 9 opponents, lost them all this season, including that 7-0 demolition at Liverpool, that 6-3 at City. And this away form in massive games is almost a psychological concern at the moment, as well as the sheer number of games that they have to play, that they have played. The Europa League, the FA Cup taking their toll. They're going to play between 61 and 65 games this season. 61 and 65. That's incredible as they progress in all of their tournaments. David, this was the first of their 9 fixtures in April. It's almost like a poor man's quadruple. It's like they've learned nothing from Liverpool last season.
Yeah, absolutely. And, it's pretty close at the top. There are still, teams like Brighton, teams like Tottenham. Obviously, we're potting before the Tottenham-Everton game, but there are teams who could catch them and put them out of the European places entirely.
One of whom will not be our next team. Let's get to it.
Yes, we got to do it. The game that eventually debunked Professor Potter's PhD thesis at TBU. That's the Todd Burley University. It's definitely a for-profit institution. I'm sure it's losing billions. Chelsea 0, Aston Villa 2. A Basque masterclass from Unai Emery saw the villains soak up the pressure and hit on the counter. Their first goal, a tidy 18th minute Ollie Watkins dink after Mark Cucurella'd his pants, heading the ball right into Watkins' path. Wild man John McGinn made it 2 on the other side of halftime with an absolute moonshot from his hometown of Glasgow. And just about 24 hours after this one wrapped up, news that Potter had been fired just 206 days after his arrival in West London. Wow.
I mean, the crazy thing about this game, Davo, is this was meant to be the only one that didn't mean anything of the whole weekend. That's what we were told, and it seems like it's had bigger repercussions than any of the others. Let's start with the game itself. It's an incredible statistic before kickoff. Chelsea have not beaten a team higher placed than Aston Villa all season. That is really all you need to know about this dead chat of a campaign. They entered this one trying to muster the narrative of progress, unbeaten in 4. Graham Potter in the international break, God bless him, talking to fans about let's effing win the Champions League. I bet that really inspired you, filled with confidence, right?
Yeah, not really. But, there had been, we should say, it's very easy in hindsight to laugh it off, but there had been glimmers of hope in the performances. And in truth, there are glimmers of hope in this performance also in terms of a lot of the dominance. But it's also the glimmers of hope that ultimately killed Graham Potter, because he can't complain that he doesn't have the players, he doesn't have the resources, he doesn't have any of the ability. It's a team where glimmers of hope are never going to work.
I mean, it's the only team where he almost can complain about having too many players, too many options, too much possibility. I mean, the game itself, just Villa, so organised, so resolute, soaked up Chelsea pressure. There was a lot of it. Were willing to play in crevices and space in their own half, lulled Chelsea onto them, then springing forward. 1 minute, John McGinn spanked a delicious shot off the bar. It was a warning shot, not taken. Cucurella and Koulibaly were then drawn upfield, slapsticked a long ball. They let it ricochet backwards off Cucurella's exquisite soft curls. And Ollie Watkins, what a first touch, the calmest of lobs. First player to net double figures goals in 3 straight seasons since that earth mover Benteke. And then Chelsea just huffed and puffed so much of the ball. And this was all going on as Thomas Tuchel had buying up over Dortmund. I was just like, God, watching this Mudryk put clear through, only Emi Martinez to beat. God bless, in the spotlight, just wilted. Shot about 5 seconds earlier than he... I mean, it was just performance anxiety. He sent a little dribbler straight into Emi's hands. The most remarkable thing other than the miss, I think Emi resisted the impulse to just make love to the ball as it got into his hands, David, just grind that groin into it. But, I mean...
Bless the poor little boy, though. He runs around, makes run after run after run. This run, he skinned everybody on the run. Chelsea never find him. So we don't get a chance, but you would love it. You would probably get a chance to laugh at Mudryk's misses 7 or 8 times a game if they actually pass the ball to him. Instead, he only gets 1 opportunity to miss.
I mean, that shot was like Fernando Torres sad. It was just like, especially he's got that tattoo on his neck. Talent is not enough. Just the weight on his shoulders, the transfer fee, the pressure, you just saw it, the war in Ukraine, the everything just crushing a human being with us all watching. Chelsea had so much of the possession. I mean, when Ben Chilwell, with all of those options, João Felix, Mudryk, I mean, the works, when he's your main goal threat, does that not tell you? Yeah.
Chilwell is, I mean, here's the thing. Chilwell was our best player on the day. He's our second best wing back because our best wing back was playing in central defence. But he was offensively, without any doubt, our most intense player. But look, the statistics, you said they were mind-blowing. 27 shots to Aston Villa's 5.
A record, I think.
A record. 27... 27 shots to Aston Villa's 5. I think that was a record. I think you're right. 70% possession, 600 passes to 285, more than double the passes. But it's all pointless. It's pointless football.
I mean, it's the most attempts in a Premier League match without finding the net since 2014. That's the record. I mean, it's really, and we should credit. We really do. I mean, John McGinn destroyed the ball for the killer goal. First goal for him for Villa in 16 months. Just huge respect to Aston Villa. Huge respect to Unai Emery, we should say, first of all. Incredible statistic about the organisation that the old slick-haired one has brought to Aston Villa is that since he arrived there November the 6th, only Arsenal and Manchester City have more Premier League wins than his Villa, which is a simply sensational statistic. But we've got to talk about Chelsea. Boos rang around Stamford Bridge at half-time and at full-time. And you all know that Simpsons episode where Smithers persuades Mr. Burns that the boos, after he screens his movie, are actually boo-earns. Do you think Todd Burley has a Smithers who says that they're just saying boo early, boo early? They're saying your name.
Yeah,
they love you.
Screaming your name.
I mean, it's incredible.
I have no idea what he's thinking.
What is it? I mean, do you think he's thinking Chelsea were 6 when I fired Thomas Tuchel 6 matches into the season? They're now 11th. This team haven't been lower than 5th in 7 years, but I spent over 600 million on players. But then on Sunday afternoon, Burley finally fired Graham Potter, the bloke who he'd paid Brighton $27 million in compensation to take him and his backroom staff just 206 days earlier. They paid $27 million. They had to get rid of Tuchel. I think that was like 12 million. They then 27 million to Brighton to bring in a man you are firing and paying compensation to. 206 days, 31 games later. It's astonishing. This is not doubling revenues, Davo. Bruno Salter, his assistant, will be the interim, but Potter, God, watching him, he is aged in dog years. 7 months he was at the club, but he was so woefully out of his depth. How do you feel about it? How do you understand it? How do you fathom it? Tell us.
Well, look, the case for Graham Potter is that this is not the kind of manager. He's a sort of a systems man, very technical. He's not the kind of manager you bring in mid-season, having not brought in, at least half of that money he didn't spend. And I'm not sure that he had anything to do with the other half of it either. I think we'll find more about that right now. That really, Burley, it seems, didn't like the way Tuchel dealt with him and dealt with the board. This is what you hear from everybody around the man, that it was just his attitude which he didn't like. But Tuchel should have stayed at least till the end of the season. Potter is the kind of guy you bring in at the beginning of the season. The other case for Potter is, yes, he's had all of these players, but the injuries at Chelsea have been very bad. They've been bad at a lot of clubs. These are one of the things you've got to go and deal with. But you've got to put it on the foreside that, as everybody is bemoaning the fact that he's not playing the same centre-back partnership, it's pretty clear that Thiago Silva would be playing for him if he wasn't injured. It's pretty clear that Fofana would be playing for him if he wasn't injured. And it's just he's been challenged by injuries all season, and in terms of getting a settled lineup. The case against is that these glimmers of hope is that he's still able to play a game that dominant. And it really was a dominant game. And I know that everybody will say, oh, yeah, but the result wasn't there. But Chelsea were dominant. Chelsea had lots of opportunities to put the ball on frame, lots of opportunities to score and take apart a team that on a pure man-for-man basis they should. And they just don't. And this is week after week after week, whether they're playing Villa or Everton or Leeds or anybody else. They're just not the kind of team that anybody is afraid of. And when you take a job at a club like Chelsea, who have this amazing tradition of winning, especially in this century, you have to do the business. And he didn't. And, other managers have been fired way quicker after winning Champions Leagues, after doing other things. I don't think he should be surprised or aggrieved at all. He had a chance and he didn't do enough with it.
God, his last press conference, or now what we know is last press conference, included the incredibly sad line. If you look at the XG, the expected goals of the McGinn shot, it's not that big a chance. And there is an old quote, which actually is from Greek philosophy. I can't remember whether it was Socrates or whether it was Plato. It doesn't matter. I think that one of them said, the manager who bangs on about XG is a doom man. That's when we knew that he was out. And on one hand, as you say, the gent really never had a chance. He's hired with a methodology of working with a young squad over time. He was then overloaded with 31 players, many of them on huge price tickets, barely scouted by Burley, interim football director, to fit any kind of a system, just flung in there. And what you got to say, his tactics in game were occasionally bewildering, and his kind of whole mild-mannered janitor vibe really at odds with the brashness that's demanded historically by the brand that is modern Chelsea. Just you've got to look at the above him, Todd Burley's kind of late scene Scarface antics with which he's run the club when he was interim director of football. He almost had no chance, just completely sank the Potter ship. So who do you want next, Davo? Lots of names. Julian Nagelsmann and his skateboard, Pochettino, Zidane, Marco Silva, Luis Enrique, Roberto De Zerbi. I mean, at a certain point, Burley should have just brought Brighton, David.
Look, I think that Chelsea fans, and I've been texting with many of them over the last 24 hours, I think we've got to brace ourselves if we really care about our club for 3 years of a rebuild. The fact is, you look at the Chelsea wage bill, just forget about, everybody obsesses about transfer fees, but look at the wage bill and look at the player wages. It makes absolutely no sense what we're paying players. And that's the reason that we can't just unload players, because they have these enormous wages, which other teams just aren't going to take. So we're going to continue. Yes, we're going to have to get rid of a lot of players in the off-season. We're going to have to get rid of the players we don't want to get rid of, and probably keep the players we do want to get rid of, and try and figure a way to sort of build a team around some kind of core of Enzo and Chilwell and Reece James. That's sort of, and Kepa. Maybe that's sort of what we've got going forward. And honestly, looking at being a mid-table kind of team for a few years until we can clean out these contracts. And at a certain point, Burley cannot afford, and apparently does not have the support of his co-directors to spend like a drunken sailor. These are the players now, and he's got to do some business going the other way. It's sort of crazy. Everybody, this weekend was messaging me, oh, he's out Roman. But I got to tell you, let's put aside, which I know we can't, but we have to, the oligarchiness and the Russianness, which is all incredibly unpleasant. But Roman did spend a lot of money, but he also did amazing business. He sold a lot of players for a lot of money. He moved very, very fast on managers, and his teams won again and again and again. Burley is out Romaning Roman and way, way, way beyond. He's not doing any of the good things that Roman did. And I think this is a club in some crisis at this point, in some crisis.
Yeah, the question is, by the way, Todd Burley's such a knee-jerk, flavour of the month kind of guy. He's probably like saying to the board, let's just hire Kim Mulkey. But I think ultimately he's going to appoint himself as interim manager. It's going to be great. I mean, it's just like watching Elon Musk run Twitter, watching Todd run Chelsea Football Club. And you're going to ask the question, who would want this job right now? That's where we are. Who would want this job? Just the chaos at the board level. You need alignment. We'll talk about it a little more later on in the podcast. You need alignment for serious, at any level, for serious football teams to really click. And there's the opposite of that. Because
the truth is, the people who want the job are probably Brodge, Frank Lampard. These are the people that want it. By the way, you could see him doing a U-turn and bringing Potter back next week. It's who knows what he's going to do.
He's probably banging his head on the boardroom table, being like, damn, Roy Hodgson's taken. He was my next guy. I can make the case.
Arm off for Roy.
I can make the case. Roy Hodgson would just walk into Chelsea and just utterly slap Todd Burley. That's the first thing he'd do. He'd walk in.
Just punch him, look him in the eyes and just punch him really
right
hard.
On the nose. Yeah, and then walk out and be like, all right, now we've done that. We will now proceed to...
Route training.
By the way,
I'll punch Burley in the gob. Now we can go to training. I love it.
Louis to get right. Am I meant to punch you too?
Right, Gaffer.
Here's a tissue, Gaffer, to wipe Burley blood off your hand.
Thanks, Ray.
You can make the thank you, Ray. I needed that tissue. I detest the stench of blood in my dry fingernails. The reality is, you can make the case. Chelsea making a dog's dinner of the season is possibly the best thing that can happen. Miss Europe completely. Do not have that Thursday, Sunday. Have that. By the way, with that though, you need proper football front office people. That is what you need. That is, if I was running Chelsea, if I was one of the investors, this is not Todd Burley's money that they are using to spend in this moment. And if it was my money, I would be getting in touch with me like, I need proper football front office people to run the club over the summer. Have Burley step way back from football decisions and make that concerted strategic effort to build. There are good players in that squad. There's some very bloody good players with a good manager, with alignment, that footballing buzzword, which means a plan in place for the very top through the manager into the locker room. Chelsea can still have the last laugh. And I do want to say this. We get occasional tweets in dark moments for Chelsea, Insta messages saying that we've got an anti-Chelsea agenda. Or that we are, this is my favourite one, enforcing a narrative on the club. Stop enforcing a narrative on my club. I will say we don't, and we aren't, but not talking about this Burley Chelsea in a critical way is honestly not, it's as reckless as not talking about FTX or Lehman Brothers in a critical way. When you have a team spend over $700 million on new players, chaotically, haphazardly, just raiding every other big team's transfer plans, jacking their players in a window, January window, bringing in so many new flavour of the months. Your Mudricks, your Enzos, firing a manager who'd won the Champions League for you because he wouldn't kiss your ring. Then firing the man you bring in for massive money to replace him. Talk about all-star games, blurting about double revenue lines before you don't know what you don't know, and your team just plummets. This is where we are with Chelsea. We are wax wings strapped on, heading to the sun. We are in pride comes before a fall. We are the dog that, all the classics, the dog that falls in love with its own reflection, right, Davo? And it's Chelsea right now. Almost all the narratives we tell our kids as cautionary tales when when they're young, narratives of arrogance, of stupidity, of greed, and thinking you're the smartest guy you walk into because of the money that's in your pocket when you walk in. This is what we're dealing with. This is not an anti-Chelsea narrative. This is just what is happening.
Yeah, look, I think that to Chelsea fans who listen to this pod and sometimes get frustrated, and I hear from a lot of them, there is a Chelsea fan at the centre of this pod, and I really am a Chelsea fan. It is just very tough to defend a lot of what this club does and has done for a very, very long time. At the same time, Chelsea have been one of the most successful teams of this century, and they have played some incredible football and they've won a lot. And oh my God, it felt great to win a lot. The only thing I could be a little bit critical of Men in Blazers over time, and perhaps I didn't enforce myself strong enough. And in those years when we were playing like Arsenal and playing like Liverpool and playing like City when we were really good, perhaps I didn't push back hard enough, Rog, when we ignored Premier League titles that we won, when we ignored Champions Leagues that we won, when we were good. But Men in Blazers was a different enterprise back then. It wasn't the same thing. It wasn't all over it. And I think some Chelsea fans are still very upset about it.
I don't think we actually watched the games at all.
But Chelsea were.
It's fair, by the way. That's fair.
Chelsea, so perhaps they never got lauded in their brightest moments, and we didn't celebrate them when they played really good football. But for me,
should we do some retro pods?
Yes, we should take on the entire 2004-2005 season. But
John Terry is a remarkable human being who transcends the sport.
But I do think that. Where Chelsea are now, and they are reflected. We see them in the light of what is going on at other clubs. And my frustration is that Chelsea were on the path to greatness. They were set up by their former owner, whatever you care to say about him, and I have a lot to say about him also, but they were set up for great, great, great success. And this era, the Todd Burley era so far, and look beyond the big money spent. Just look at the wage bill. Look at the decisions made in the back office. Look at the ticket prices in the stadium.
We got him for 8 years, lads. We got him for 8 years. Mudryk.
Look at everything. Well, Mudryk, look, I actually don't think, I think that's a bad example, because I think Mudryk is, yes, it's an insane bill, and they why, I'd love to know why they bought him, but Mudryk is on a very, very, he's paid peanuts compared to other Premier League footballers. So you have to look at that deal. But he's only done that after he's, splurging 350 million a week on Raheem Sterling and almost as much on Koulibaly. Is that he's got this incredibly, bloated wage bill from like top to bottom, where no one really knows where they stand, and it's gonna result in really good players leaving the club, and not the ones that people want. Like everybody in their fantasy transfers is like, get this guy out and bring in, like, for years when it was like, can we, Orlando Magic fans trying to trade Scott Skiles for Michael Jordan. But it's it's not going to happen. But you've got to, you've just got to figure a way. It's going to be years of pain. And so it doesn't really matter who manages. Good luck to Bruno. Love his name. Loved him as a player for Brighton and Valencia. I think he's superb guy, and hope Bruno lasts till the end of the season and does a good job. I don't know what they do moving forward. I don't know who would really want the job.
God, when I watch Todd Burley run Chelsea, it is almost exactly, eerily actually, like watching that Louisiana water plant worker, the one who was arrested and fired from his job last week after the video showed him urinating in his own water supply. One and the same.
Yeah. Absolutely. Okay. Talking of managers, Rog, this was the delight of my weekend, other than the Alcaraz Sinner semi-final in Miami. Crystal Palace 2, Leicester 1. Roy Hodgson's first game in charge of Crystal Palace. Well, first game back in charge of Crystal Palace. Sees him pit the old piece of rope he uses to keep his trow up against the Gucci belt of Brog. And despite each team's dire position in the table, an incredible collection of goals. A 56th minute Ricardo Pereira Portuguese thunderbolt. A thumping Eze free kick that hit the bar, and then Leicester keeper Daniel Averson before drifting over the line. And in the dying embers, what a goal. Roy Hodgson's substitute, Jean-Philippe Mateta, took an AU brother ball and thumped it home for the winner. Palace's first win of 2023 put them on 30 points, 4 clear of the bad place. Leicester, however, are now 19th.
The bad place.
And Sunday morning, the unthinkable happened. Leicester told Brog, it's not us, it's you. His 4-year reign comes to an end.
Roy is risen, 75 years of age, 682 days after that old man in the sea waved farewell to the Palace faithful for what we assumed was the final time. After suffering in between the first relegation of his career, he watched Watford go down in his sunglasses without making any substitutions at all. He's back. Now, can you imagine Davo just being out of the game and knowing what we know, Premier League management is a brutal, soul-destroying buzzsaw of a business, and deciding, that club over there is flailing with 10 games to go, can't score, and deciding, yeah, I'd like that grief, that pain, that grind, that trauma. I mean, football's a hell of a drug, right?
Yeah, it really is. But yeah, it's just nice to be needed. It's just nice to be needed. It's nice to be wanted. And it's nice to be the perfect man in the situation. And he really was.
Is that what you think it is? You think in his house there's just like a dusty old school telephone that's not rung in about 6 months, and suddenly it rang again and he blew off the dust, picked it up, and it was Steve Parish, and he's like, oh, hello Steve, my phone has not rung in several months. What do you want, son?
When I saw Steve Parish a few weeks ago when I was in London, I thought he was probably going to try and stick with Patrick Vieira, and I think he wanted to stick with Patrick Vieira until the end of the season, but he wanted to see some change in the way that he managed his team and his team both on the field and behind the scenes. But he did talk a lot about Roy, but I didn't think in any way he was thinking about bringing Roy back. He was just talking about how hard Roy was and how good he was at motivating the players, mainly by having them all think that he had the hump with them, and sending Ray Lewington out to yell in their faces at every single moment during training and during the games. But it was some of that hardness, it's that toughness, which sometimes has been has been, underestimated in Roy Hodgson. When you look at him, we think of him just being an avuncular old man and a real gentleman, and he is both of those things. But he's also dead hard, and I think that's what Palace needed. And my guess is he wasn't surprised at all when the phone rang.
I'm not sure if the phone rang or if it was a bottle with a little message in it that washed up on his beach or what it was. Can you imagine him? Or a little pigeon landing on his little window. Hello, pigeon. Oh, what? You've got a little message tied to your beak. Whoa, Palace need me, puffy chest. Palace, 12th place. That sounds great. But remember, that was 5 places ahead of Leicester. Yeah, but it was just 2 points clear of the relegation zone. I love that you called it the bad place. Hodgson, we think of him as a shut down the back kind of guy, not a conjure the goals manager. Palace, this team who just can't score. So many Palace fans, I've got to say, that I know looked at the Hodgson rehire as just like, is this the year 2023 AD? Are we really doing this? This is a disaster. And even Roy asked pre-game how he felt. It was delicious. He said, nervous, which I adore. He went 3 strikers. That was why he was probably nervous. And his team then unfurled a surreal tour de force of a first half, 20 shots, most by a team since 2015. Obviously not a single goal. Leicester probably couldn't believe they'd reached half-time level. Had the temerity to open the scoring in the second. Pereira lashing home. Palace suddenly desperate when they needed a goal. They got one. I'm sure it was just how Roy Hodgson drew it up, actually. Eze, first start in over a month, and corked a actually deliciously ridiculous free kick at arc, spanked the crossbar, bounced down, hit the unfortunate Leicester goalkeeper Iverson on the leg, dribbled across the line. Roy Hodgson looked on the bench as if it was just like, I love it when a plan comes together.
Yeah, and as a player who couldn't really get in the team under Patrick Vieira. We should say that Brendan in the post-match called the decision that gave that free kick debatable, which I really enjoyed.
God love Brendan Rodgers. We'll get to you in a minute. Brodge, 94th minute though. 2 Hodgson substitutes. Anayu and Marteta came in. And just Marteta spinning off Suter. Exquisite first touch, lashing home, last kick of the ball, Lamont Butler style, first goal since August. Crystal Palace had their first victory of calendar year 2023. Just cue raptures, David. Hodgson couldn't have been any more excited. I'm just kidding. He had absolutely no reaction whatsoever. Incredible. Well, you must have been screaming, David.
I was. It was amazing. And very, very clearly, the instruction was to whichever AU brother that was, run at players and deliver it into the box. And what did he do? In the final action of the game, he ran at a couple of midfielders, span it into the box. Mateta is there on the edge of the box. As you said, a miraculous first touch on not the most perfect of surfaces at Selhurst Park, and spins and puts it in the net. And it's insane. But it's just the kind of direct football which Crystal Palace fans have been crying out for all season.
God, I love it. I'm so bloody happy for that club. I adore everything about the culture of fandom that exists there, and to see them have life, have joy, have wonder and possibility again with Roy Hodgson at the helm. There's something incredibly life-affirming. Not so for Leicester, though. Into the bottom 3. Brodge fired the day after. Brodge's flair. Brodge's flowing football. Brodge's Gucci belt, which is really the opposite of a relegation fighter. Leicester have been playing as if they don't want to change, if they don't want to fight for points in the mud, still want to try and play that DNA of attacking football. And the fear for Leicester's real. Hence, Sunday morning, Brodge let go, apparently by mutual agreement, which is we hate you and you can't stand us. AKA fired. 6 losses in his last 7 all comps. 11th managerial departure of the season at that point. And after 4 years at Leicester, Davo, where he delivered an FA Cup, a thing of wonder, and I think he's still annoyed that there's been no statue unveiled of him outside the ground. Just at Flatback 4 tweeted us, the Brodge don't do the Championship. He will be back though, right? And Graham Potter, fascinatingly, amongst those instantly linked to Leicester.
Yeah, absolutely. And to Crystal Palace, we should say. I think that, Brodge, we laugh about him. He's given us many scenes on Men in Blazers, but he really did do a very good job at Leicester. And I just think that this year, you look at the players on that team, you look at the quality of the players front to back in that squad, and you just can't understand why they're sitting down in the, what do we call it, the bad place. So I think that's what he's paid the price for, and probably doesn't communicate very well with anyone other than himself in the mirror.
In the mirror.
And he's then, and so he pays the price. But yeah, he will be back. He's too good a manager, too much a football person not to be.
For Palace, one last word. 5 enormous 6-pointers on the trot. Leeds, Southampton, Everton, Wolves, West Ham. Escape route is clear. And as I say, the joy of my weekend watching Roy Hodgson and his trusty assistant Ray Lewington shake hands at full time, like gentlemen on the sideline, combined age, about Mel Brooks. It was really a human thing of wonder.
Yeah, and just the generosity that Roy Hodgson showed his opponents and his opposing manager in the post-match press conference. I wish we saw more of that in football. Brighton 3, Brentford 3. A clash between each of these overachieving European aspirants turns into a frantic freewheeling scoring spree. It was more like an NCAA game. The visiting Bees took the lead on 3 separate occasions, only to see the Seagulls draw level. The final time, a 90th minute penalty from Alexis McAllister. Oh, no, the Argentinian one. Brighton are 6th, Brentford are 7th, each on 43 points, and with those dreams of European football on the precipice of becoming reality.
God, 2 stats-driven, ambitious, tenacious darlings collided. Madcap football ensued. GFOP Mr. Trish instant to say, new rule for the Brentford against Brighton game. Winning manager instantly becomes Spurs' new coach. So no surprise, they both agreed to draw on the day and then rue their drop points. The style of the goals, the manifestation of both teams. Matoma with the most delicate Matoma goal that ever Matomed. Brentford, I think, have the most goals off set pieces this season. Of course they do. This team built around exploiting marginal advantages. I admire both of these clubs so bloody much. Their owners, their managers, their squads. In a Premier League season filled with turbulence, firings, sheer chaos, crazy purchases. These 2 clubs are sane and strategic and joyous. The model of rude health. Proof, healthy, rational success is possible in the Premier League jungle.
Absolutely. Rog, Nottingham Forest 1, Wolves 1, a Midlands scrap between 2 sides desperate for points. The Tricky Trees took the lead on 38 minutes when Welsh international Brennan Johnson steered one past Kayla Navas from the Kim Ruiest of angles. But in the 83rd minute, the DP, who doesn't involve any tam or gam, Daniel Podence, lashed one home to split, not spit, the spoils. Wolves on 28 points, Forest on 27. Things are tight.
Tight! Oh, heartbreak for Forest. 7 minutes left on the clock. Up pops super sub. Wolves top scorer Daniel Podence scored a very Podence style goal, cutting in to slap the ball high and rising, and then also managed to somehow avoid a red for spitting in the face of Brennan Johnson. The old Terrell Owens. No handshake for either manager after the game. Really the perfect symbol of just how feisty the whole thing was. And I'm old enough to remember when the City ground was a fortress and Forest won everything at home. Rumours continue to abound that Steve Cooper's fighting to keep hold of that job. Starting with tomorrow's 6-pointer against Leeds. What an insane season that manager's had of darkness and glory and glimpses of darkness again. Oh, it's incredible to witness.
Yeah, you say no handshake, but they did hug. And then as they pulled away from the hug, started getting into it with each other. If we cared more about these clubs, I think we'd be analysing that frame by frame by frame. But it's tough to see exactly what went on. West Ham 1, Southampton 0. Managers getting fired, teams going down like burning Messerschmitts over London circa 1940. And there's David Moyes sitting in the cut, surviving must-win game after must-win game. This one, a 6-pointer against Southampton, was decided by a towering 24th minute header from Moroccan Naif Aguerre, I think his first for the club. The Irons vault up to 14th. Southampton, meanwhile, they remain dead last in the bad place.
Yeah, nervy, tense football. 2 slot-filled teams. Was Aguerre's first goal. Couldn't have scored a more crucial one. Delivered a 3rd win in 15 games for David Moyes. Southampton yeah, they did muster a fist. Not really much of one. They had loads of the ball and could do almost nothing with it in the final third. I think they hit the bar about the closest they came. For David Moyes, he did that grimace that he tries to pass off with a smile full time. West Ham saw 14th place, aka one big boy point off relegation. For Southampton, Newcastle, Fulham, Arsenal now await their bottom, but still by no means out of it. Man City next, though. Palace and Bournemouth at home this month. I think the results in those two games may determine their fate.
And finally, Bournemouth 2, Fulham 1. The Premier League's cuddly Classico sees the Cherries storm from behind to topple the Cottagers after an Andreas Pereira goal put the visitors ahead. A second half, Marcus Tavernier, worldy, and some Dom Solanke box slop. That saw the Cherries get their second in 3 games to move up to 16th.
Yeah, Bournemouth looked to be heading for a third defeat in 4 games, but those 2 substitutions changed the game. Tavernier, scorching, sweet, left-footed drive. Corker, up and down. I think Stevie Wonder would call it a master blaster. And then Solanke bundled the ball over the line after Leno could only parry a Ryan Christie drive. Robinson and Reed could only stand and watch. Back-to-back home wins for Gary O'Neill's Bournemouth. Michael B. Jordan's Bournemouth. They're out of the bottom 3 and Fulham's dreams of Europe evaporating. God, make it not so that they're now threatened with a sense of a season of wonder just turning into playing out dead rubbers.
And in a game that kicks off right around the time this pod is released, Everton versus Tottenham. Just a massive affair as Everton are back in the relegation zone and the Antonio Conte-led Spurs are now outside the top 4 looking in.
Yeah, I mean, we've got to talk about this melancholy, self-loathing derby. A game so bloody sad. The prospect of it's like having to watch 90 minutes of a knife fight between Eeyore and Bing Bong from Inside Out. Let's talk about Tottenham first. Acting head coach Christian Stellini alongside Ryan Mason. He says the club is, quote, not in crisis, but it's been a tumultuous week, even by Spurs standards. Director of football Fabio Patrici stepping off after being banned worldwide. I love that. Worldwide. It's like Pitbull is working for FIFA now for his role in Juventus's naughty years of budgeting. That after Antonio Conte left, quote, by mutual consent on Monday after 60 months in charge. 8 losses in his last 18. I keep thinking if Spurs had not had that penalty given against him late in that collapse against Southampton, you kind of wonder, would he have had cause to go nuclear in that press conference? But you can't be hypothetical about history. But off he goes with his reported nearly $6 million payoff for being a destructive dick in public. Nice job if you can get it. David, what do you make of it all as a slew of coaches, including Nagelsmann and Poch and De Zerbi, kind of similar vein as Chelsea's are now linked to Spurs, in addition to the job at Stamford Bridge?
I'm pretty sure that Antonio Conte is still holed up in the Tottenham Lodge with a bunch of ciggies, some Peronis, maybe a nice pair of Berettas. I don't know what he's got over there, but I doubt mutual consent. That's hilarious. That means you're fired, okay? And then
I agree.
Yeah,
I agree.
I agree that you fired me. Now give me the money. That's mutual consent. Yeah, I mean, who knows? I mean, yes, it ended up being a dumpster fire and everything going on behind the scenes at Tottenham, which is bizarre because they are sitting in the European places right now, and this is a pretty big game for them today. If they win it, I think they're going to be, challenging again. Tottenham are far too good a team to be, for us to be this desperate about them, and Antonio Conte's implosion, I mean, even by his standards, it's impressive. I doubt we'll see him back in the Premier League again. But you never know. Amazing? He probably on Burley's call list.
He's gonna be back at Chelsea probably by the time we next pod. Stellini and Mason, just to be clear, they probably have all the new manager bounce that they'll need to do us in this afternoon. But we have to remind listeners, particularly Tottenham listeners who are all on the ledge, Spurs are still very much in this Champions League fight, which, I mean, God, makes them a complete world away from Everton, who we also have to touch upon in all kinds of darkness, been charged by the Premier League for breaking financial fair play rules. We don't yet know exactly how. But I mean, no crap that they've broken financial fair play rules. Separately, accounts released Friday show that if we're relegated, we have to immediately repay a $185 million loan with money we simply do not have. Essentially, being relegated. This is. I mean, I'm sounding almost neutral in this, but I'm so dead inside at this point. Being relegated may effectively bankrupt the club. And then chef's kiss. The Guardian reported our vaunted new stadium is, quote, months behind schedule. And I'm so numb to it all, David. I love the club. We are a joke of a club at the board level. GFOP at Patches tweeted this week, Davo, not outside the possibility. Next year's El Blaze Erico is between producer J-Dub's Ipswich and Roger Bennett's Everton. I mean, I'd cry if I wasn't all out of tears.
Yeah, it's bizarre. I was just reading the Mike Piazza Athletic piece in which he at one point was floated as being a potential Everton owner, which I thought would have been interested before him and his wife had an interesting adventure.
He'd still be a better owner than Farhad Moshiri. I want to just close on Everton because the game has not yet come and I'm dreading it like a mofo. We lost a great one this weekend, Ruichi Sakamoto, the Japanese composer and musician, and he said something beautiful that I now think about when I think about Everton. One of his favourite quotes was, "Ars longa, vita brevis, art is long, life is short." And that's what I'm drawing sustenance from, Davo. To art, Sean Dyche's art.
Yeah, it's something. Okay. Rog, before we go, a quick reminder about everything we've got happening at Men in Blazers this week. All of it powered by Bud Light. Easy to drink, easy to enjoy. Tuesday, a special amp after Chelsea versus Liverpool. I might have to join you for that. The link is all over our social. And later this week, a brand new episode of Vamos with Herc Gomez presented by Bud Light. Rog, I'm absolutely loving Herc's pod. And Friday, you're back with another edition of WGFOP. Call in your questions at 646-450-9472. Can we get a toast to bring us home, Rogelio?
Yeah, I want to raise this Jägermeister, this bolt of human emotion in a shot glass to fans of Egyptian champion Zamalek, who showed their displeasure at the team's insipid African Champions League play. They were knocked out the group stages for the third consecutive tournament. And in Egyptian football, for political reasons, banners and tifos are not allowed. So the fans went next level, delivering a message to the team's president creatively by wearing all black and organising themselves into a giant angry-faced emoji in the stands. Team president Mortada Mansour promptly banned them, but I hope their artistry catches on. Everton fans, don that brown clothing, unleash a giant poop emoji at Goodison Park this weekend, you crazy diamonds. Courage.
You can follow us on Twitter at Men in Blazers, at MC Davis, at Ross Bennett, on Instagram at Men in Blazers, at MC Davis, on Facebook, Men in Blazers, Twitch, twitch.tv/Men in Blazers. We're on YouTube. You can see a video version of our podcast there, including this podcast, which we will release in full. That's right, from the opening to the close. There's a very special Marcus Rashbeans interview dropping on Wednesday evening. Do not miss that. Also, our TikTok. Look for it at Men in Blazers. And you can always email us at meninblazers@gmail.com. Venderpunk Rog.
War Pig.
Was that a Rabona?
I like snacks.
Balds win.
Take that, Gloria.
Balds lose.
To Tweed.
Abrigado, rock on, mate.
Kung Fu Fight in America. Love you, David.
Love you, Rog.
Relax, dog. It's a dog fight out there.
Debatable.
Listen to the full version of this podcast and all our podcasts wherever you get your pods. But first, subscribe here for more Men in Blazers videos. And courage.